Hi everybody, it's Mike here from The Art of Guitar, here with some more gut-wrenching songs. The last one I did was the 8 most gut-wrenching hard rock ballads. And a lot of people seem to identify with a lot of my choices, and I thought it would be really fun to try it with some different genres. And the years that really got me, where I was the most depressed, I would have to say, was around the grunge era. So we're talking 91 to about 95, somewhere in that. So what I want to do is I want to talk about my personal top 8. I'm going to throw in a couple honorable mentions as well, but I'd love to hear what your choices are for the most gut-wrenching grunge era songs. I don't want to call them all ballads because they're not all ballads, but of all time. Okay. So the first one might seem like a curious choice, but it's Burned by the Cure. It's really hard to explain. I tried to explain to my students one time how big the movie The Crow was at the time. There was a lot of other awesome artists, including 9 Inch Nails on this soundtrack, but Burned by the Cure is really the song that rose to the top, at least for me. I already like The Cure, but this, to me, rose up to be one of my favorite songs by the band, which is funny because it's on a soundtrack and not on their actual album, for what I know. And the reason this song really pulls at my heartstrings is because at the time I remember driving to the theater, and we had to go to a faraway theater because all the other ones close to me were sold out. That's how big The Crow was. And on our way there, we had to take this certain highway, and the driver of the car turned around and he was like, "You know what happened here a couple days ago? Some girl was so depressed that she was in the backseat of her car that she just opened the door and rolled out of the car and got hit by a car and died." And so I always cement that memory of that story with the movie. So I'm watching The Crow. I'm super depressed because of what the driver told me. And I'm just watching the movie, and it's already, kind of a sad movie. Brandon Lee passed away in the making of the movie. And his dad, Bruce Lee, was one of my biggest heroes. So that was already a gut-wrencher. And then to hear that story and to associate it all together really got to me. So to this day, the thought and the memory of The Crow is kind of a bittersweet memory. It's a great movie. I really love that film. I hope they never try to redo it, although I heard they might be trying to redo it. But it's shrouded in sadness for me because of those reasons. The next song is another weird one, but it still remains by Stone Temple Pilots. It's off of one of their sometimes forgotten albums called Purple. I really love this album because I really think they started to sound like themselves around this time. Before then, I think they were very much influenced by a lot of the other bands that were kind of big at the time. I remember one time I heard Sex Type Thing, and I thought it was Alice in Chains, and I spent all evening going through my friend's Alice in Chains CDs to try to find the song, and I never could. So around the time I heard the song for the first time, I remember I was really heartbroken, not because somebody broke my heart, but because I was really longing for somebody that I've always wanted to date, and she wanted nothing to do with me. And so I'm really pining after this one girl. Sometimes you set your sights on somebody and you think that'll make you happy, but deep down I knew that it would never happen. And the song came on and it really just kind of clinched the feeling I was having at the moment. And the lyric, which is pretty visceral by the way, is "Take a bath, I'll drink the water that you leave." And I'm like, whoa. That's crazy obsession right there, but I was feeling that at the time. And then the lyric right after goes, "If you should die before me, ask if you can bring a friend." So it gets pretty emo, like way back before emo was big. But check out the song. It's not like a slow ballad or anything like that. It's pretty mid-tempo, kind of sludgy. Take a bath, I'll drink the water that you leave. But just the culmination of the certain chords that they're using, along with the vocal melody, and just the expression that Scott Weiland put into everything really clinched it for me. Number 6 is Something in the Way by Nirvana. Now, when Nevermind came out, all the big hits were right at the top of the zeitgeist. Smells Like Teen Spirit, Lithium, Come As You Are, all those tunes. But it took me a long time before I finally heard Something in the Way, and that's a shame because it's such a great tune. When it first kicks in, it's got these really low acoustic chords. It almost sounds like Elliott Smith. If you ever heard the song Needle in the Hay, it's kind of got that sort of darkness, that deep depth of an acoustic guitar. And I think it's because it's dropped down a whole step and then dropped down to C. So it's drop C tuning. So it sounds real guttural. But it isn't until the chorus hits that I really get the chills. All of a sudden the chorus hits, the vocal becomes doubled. So he overdubs another one of his vocals singing the same line. Something in the way. And so it has this really cool chorusy sound to it. chorusy sound in the chorus. I guess that makes sense. And then what really does it is all of a sudden a cello comes in and starts playing underneath the words. So it's one of those things, it's like the perfect combination of everything hitting at once. We're already to number 5, and that's Smashing Pumpkins, and the song is called Soma. And a lot of people mentioned this in my last video's comments because, they didn't know I was going to do other videos with different genres. But Soma is a big song for a lot of people, and I think it caught a lot of people by surprise. For me, it happened during Lollapalooza of 1994. It was a weird time. I was just getting out of school, and the future just seemed kind of scary and confusing. I didn't know what I was really going to end up doing, but I knew it was going to involve guitar somehow, but it was still very much a dream of mine, but it seemed so out of reach. So we end up going to Lollapalooza. I see a bunch of really cool bands, the Flaming Lips, the Verve, L7, the Breeders, Beastie Boys. So it was a great show. But by the end of the day, we were all getting really tired. I remember feeling really dirty and sweaty. And then they actually hosed us down at one point, which was kind of nice at the time. Sounds like hell right now at my age to be in that kind of situation, but it was fun back then. So we're all tired. We decided to just sit kind of far away on the side of this, the side of the crowd. We didn't want to be in the crowd anymore. So I remember there was a little grass hill that we sat in, and we were just exhausted, like I said. Well, Smashing Pumpkins comes out, and I'm real excited because first of all, I had a huge crush on Darcy, like everyone else, but couldn't wait to see her live. And then I thought they're going to come out and just punch us in the face. They're going to kick in a Cherub Rock or Geek USA or something. And it's going to bring us all back to life. Because like I said, we were tired. We were looking for some energy, But instead, they came out and did the complete opposite. They started with the song Soma. And that opening riff kicked in, and it just took me to this magical place, But it wasn't all good. Because I thought, I need to wake up. I need something heavy and exciting. And if you know the lyrics, in the song, he says, close your eyes and sleep. So even though it's like a magical feeling, I literally felt like I was going to sleep, just the music just puts you in that kind of feel. It's kind of like a lullaby, you know what I mean? So it got to the point where we're just like in this magical, sleepy place. And then the one last kiss, goodnight part happens. One last kiss, goodnight. And the lights got warmer, the yellow lights kicked in. Everything was blue and green before that happened. And they kind of like shined on the audience. It felt like sunlight came through the stage or something right at that point. And it breathed new air into all of us. So all of a sudden I felt like this rush of energy. And then the distortion kicked in. And from then on, the show was just rocking. So it's funny how them doing the complete opposite of what I wanted them to do actually ended up with a better payoff. You know what I mean? Coming out and just like kicking into something really heavy would have been very cool and probably would have energized us right away. But they give us sort of the slow burn into it. So it seemed to stick with me a lot more. I mean, that memory is seared into my brain for life. Number 4 is Pearl Jam's Nothing Man. And, there are a lot of sad Pearl Jam songs. If you go back in their discography, there's always 1 or 2 or 3 songs that I wouldn't say are depressing. They just make you really think about life in a very deep way. Well, my first job was working at a CD store, not a CD store. It was kind of seedy, but we had CDs for sale and cassettes. And I remember just watching people in the mall walking by because it was in a mall. And I don't know why, but I would see people walking by themselves, like older people sometimes, and they just looked really sad. And it kind of bummed me out at the time. Well, we would get advanced copies of CDs. It was one of the perks of working there. And we could play them all day if we wanted to and just listen to them. Actually, we could choose any CD from the store and play it. But I love playing the new albums. Back then, I liked new music. A lot different from now, but we got Vitology in, and it was really interesting because it came in weird packaging. It was like this book looking thing, and it was made out of this weird material. You'd open it up, and there's the CD and all the lyrics and stuff. And I played it, and I fell in love with the album right away. I already liked 10 and Verses, but this album just really hit me at the right time. Well, it all came together in perfect sync. Nothing Man came on, and this old guy walked by, and it just like hit me a certain way. I'm like, oh man, that's really depressing to just have all the pieces fall into place to make me sad. And as the song went along, the guy had long since walked by, but the lyric was, caught a bolt of lightning, curse the day I let it go. I'm just really using my best guess for these lyrics. I'm pretty close, I think. But I pictured the guy's life, and maybe he had like the love of his life, and somehow he blew it, and now he's all alone or whatever. So I kind of related that to the man who walked by. And then on the second verse, Eddie Vedder jumps up an octave with his voice. She once believed. And it just sounds like he's howling in sadness. It's hard to describe or explain, but if you play the song, you'll know what I'm talking about. After I quit that job at that CD store, I actually just went down the mall a little ways to another CD store called Sam Goody. I'm sure older people remember Sam Goody. And I was excited. I was moving up in the world, man. I was making 50 cents more than my previous job. So I was making $5.50 an hour, swear to God. And now that I was making the big bucks, I had more responsibilities. They called me a third key, so I actually had a key to the store, and I had to go before the mall opened and push up that big grate, that big metal grate, and open the store and do all the opening duties. And there's something really sad about being in an empty mall that early. I'm sort of a night owl, so I hated getting up early, so I already felt like crap. I'm in this large empty mall. Everything's echoing when you first get there. And then you're doing all this stuff you really don't want to do and you feel terrible. So in order to feel better, I would play music. It was always my cure-all. And we got a shipment in of brand new albums, and one of them was Mad Season. And so I put it in, I hit random, just to throw it off a little bit, and River of Deceit came on. And just hearing that opening riff just sort of, made me feel extra sad. It's something like that. I'm close, but it's very Hendrixy, So it's funny. It made me feel sad because I love Hendrix, but just the way it's played, and it's just so bare bones. And then when Lane Staley's voice came in, I got really surprised because I'm like, oh yeah, Lane Staley from Alice in Chains is in like a side project or something, and this is it. I didn't know the name of it, and boom, there it was right in front of me. And I love the artwork. I was reading the lyrics, and it was a cool way to avoid doing work for a couple minutes because my boss wasn't going to be in for another hour, so I just sort of slacked and listened to the album and read the booklet. Lane Staley's voice made me feel kind of sad too. It's, the way he sings in this album. I was used to rockin', powerful Lane Staley, like growing up, listening to Facelift and to Dirt. And all of a sudden, he sounded very vulnerable. I believe it to be. In a different kind of way. And I know he was going through a lot of stuff. He had a lot of demons. And the lyric, "My pain is self-chosen," really hit me in the gut. Just because, a lot of the times when I felt down, I knew that a lot of it was my own fault. And it gave me a glimmer of hope, though. It was kind of this weird insight all of a sudden that, hey, maybe if I'm in control of how sad I feel, I could also be in control of feeling better. So it gave me hope in a strange way. Number 2 is Far Behind by Candlebox. Now, this was a huge commercial hit. That was the biggest hit for that band, even though they had some really great songs. I think they had another hit called You might want to check out. Very cool tune. But a lot like River of Deceit, this song's intro is on a clean guitar, and it just has this lonely sound. Like if a riff could sound lonely, this one pretty much feels that way to me. It's weird because the way that riff sounds, it always makes me have memories in a nostalgic way, but it's always through like a 8mm camera filter. Like they show like old movies like from the 60s and stuff like that. I have these memories of when I was a kid, but it's run through 8mm film filter, and that's the soundtrack for some reason. It's really depressing sometimes. Okay, so before we talk about number 1, let's go through the 3 honorable mention songs. The first one is Hurt by 9 Inch Nails. Now, a lot of people will be like, 9 Inch Nails wasn't a grunge band, and I know that. But, if you take the timeline between 91 and 95, this was such a huge song, and it comes from a heavier band, so I kind of mix them all together sometimes in my brain. Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, 9 Inch Nails, Smashing Pumpkins. It's all kind of in the same circles for me for some reason. But I was sitting in my driveway, and it started to snow outside, and all of a sudden the radio station played this song, and it was one of the first times I ever heard it, and it starts with this chord. So you don't hear sharp 11 in a lot of hit songs, so I thought that's really a strange combination of notes right there. And I always wondered if someone went up to Trent Reznor and made a bet with him. They're like, I bet you can't write a song around these chords. He's like, okay, hold my absinthe. What's really weird about the Downward Spiral, that's the album that this song is from, is if you listen to it in its entirety, you would think it's got to be one of the darkest albums of all time if you just read the lyrics, for example. But when you listen to it, it has this weird encompassing warmth to it. Very hard to describe, you know? And then, of course, this song was made even more depressing to me after I heard the Johnny Cash version, which was recorded, I believe, a year before he passed away.
To see if I still feel.
So yeah, I just couldn't believe how that made me feel, the remake of it. Usually I don't like remakes, but Johnny Cash just, you know, he was at the end of his life, and it's probably one of the most cutting to the bone versions of a song I've ever heard. The second honorable mention will go back to Pearl Jam. Like I said, they have a ton of songs that I could have chose, but this song is called Black. Huge commercial success. Of course, Alive came out. Even Flow came out. Jeremy. It was just such a huge onslaught of hits from the album 10. But then Black came out, and I just remember hearing the intro. It sounded like a guitar being played through an old-fashioned radio or something. The lyrics in themselves didn't really depress me at the time. You know, I just thought this is kind of like a weird love song or something. And the end, when they start doing the part, that's when it really got me. I don't know what it is about that melody, but it just repeats over and over and over again, and all of a sudden it kind of sucks you in. Time to switch guitars. Now I'm very grateful for the next song hitting me at a certain time in my life, because it could have really driven me into the ground, you know, hopefully not literally, but just emotionally. And that's Down in a Hole by Alice in Chains. And that's kind of an obvious choice. You know, a lot of people probably thought that was going to be number one. But I have to give it an honorable mention in my case because, like I said, it hit me at a certain time where I wasn't super down. We were actually setting up for a gig at an out-of-town gig, and the sound man, for some reason, decided to play Dirt by Alice in Chains on repeat. So I heard the album like 5 times. I think it was like the first couple days that it was released. He was really excited about it, and it really made me love that album. But the chords used in the song are very sad to me. You know, that hammer-on in the beginning with that A minor chord reminds me of Fade to Black by Metallica. You know, that part? So when I heard that, I instantly felt a tinge of, you know, emo. And of course, after Lane Staley passed away, this song just took on a new depth for everybody. And that lyric, I've been guilty of kicking myself in the teeth. Once again, just like the Mad Season song, My Pain is Self-Chosen, I think he was very self-aware that a lot of his issues were self-imposed. Okay, and the number one song on my list is not a song. It's an entire EP. Jar of Flies by Alice in Chains. A lot of people are probably rolling their eyes like, yeah, duh, you know, that had to be number one. To a lot of people, if you mention Jar of Flies, you know, they either have no idea what you're talking about, like, that was an Alice in Chains album. Other people, that's their favorite Alice in Chains album. It's kind of funny because it was like an EP, a lot like their album Sap was. It wasn't really an official huge release like Facelift or their self-titled album or Dirt. It was kind of like an in-between type of an album. And I was originally just going to choose Nutshell because that's a huge song in a lot of people's lives. It's very sad, you know, the... I love those two chords put together, you know, the C add 9 to the E minor 7 like that. So beautiful. I'd almost go as far as to say that that's my generation's Wish You Were Here. You know, the classic Pink Floyd song. When you play that intro, you get the same, at least I do, I get the same sort of vibe from those similar chords. And Jerry Cantrell's vocals really shine on this album. I really love his voice in Nutshell. It's really hard when you're next to like an ultra epic singer like Lane Staley to shine, but you know, it's kind of like Nancy Wilson next to Ann Wilson. You could say like you can't always be the brightest star, but you could still shine. I don't know, it sounds like a really bad greeting card or something. Never say that to your partner, okay? And I also love those real cutting licks that Jerry Cantrell throws into the song. Once again, let's switch guitars. I don't know if it's the front pickup. Either way, it's a killer set of licks and it fits the song perfectly. It's not flashy, it just feels right. But then I thought about how Rotten Apple affects me the second I hear that opening bass lick. Actually, I wasn't going to play it, but I'm going to go grab the bass so I can play it. So this will have to be bass through a guitar amp because I wasn't prepared. That just puts me right back to when I first heard this. And then that wailing talk box that's shrouded in reverb. It sounds like Jerry Cantrell is just playing all by himself in a giant empty house or something. And as this keeps going on, you feel more and more like a raw, exposed nerve. That's the best way I can explain it, which doesn't sound very pleasing or pleasant. But as soon as the vocals come in, it's this like wall of vocal harmonies, even though it's not that many voices happening at the same time. But all of a sudden it feels like a warmth came in. You know, it's almost like you're that exposed raw nerve and all of a sudden somebody pours like warm honey on you and all of a sudden you feel good again. I love the chorus because it goes, I believe, to E major. And then it goes to C, but not C major. It goes to C7. Very interesting chord choice right there. And it gives it sort of this weird twisted sound for a second. And the vocals follow it perfectly. It's such a well-crafted chorus. It actually might be a C9 now that I think of it. Either way, you have that flatted 7th in there with the major 3rd. You get that awesome sound in there. Then we have I Stay Away, great song to play on a 12-string. Wailin' Wasp is probably one of the best instrumentals of all time in my opinion. It's cool how you can actually hear his fingers sliding against the strings like that. Makes it feel real organic. So does the cover, by the way, of the album. You know, speaking of warmth and honey and all that stuff, if you look at the cover of that album, it kind of looks that way too. And then another damn cello comes in and makes me feel even more emotional, but just the way it comes in and plays that really great melodic line before they return back to the riff. Such a great thing to add to the song. The song No Excuses has a great drum intro, and it's a good feeling song. It doesn't really depress me too much, and it was actually kind of a big radio hit for a while, surprisingly. The song Don't Follow also really shows off Jerry Cantrell's vocal ability, and the only song that I never really connected with too much was Swing on This. It just kind of has this happy feel to it, you know, it's like a twisted swing feel, and it's a great tune. It just didn't fit my mood at the time. I don't know if they put that at the end just to cheer you up a little bit after all the depression, but maybe it made some people feel better. I'm not sure. But I always used to skip back to the beginning of the album at that point. So that's my list. Let me know what you thought the most gut-wrenching grunge-era songs were. I'd love to read about them in the comments section. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you later. Bye-bye.